on our website, did it many years ago. You can go there, we have a section, Educational Center, and you'll see experiments listed there, but you can use a simple 2-liter CO2, it's actually at my website, co2science.org.
Okay.
And you can learn to do experiments just using 2 and 3 liter pop bottles and do it in your own home and that sort of thing. But I've never had any issues with the RICO stuff. I've never had that personally. I think the battle we face is just getting our message out, and that takes, unfortunately, you're battling a government machine that's using.
From college now are being told CO2 is bad also.
Right, we're facing this battle on numerous fronts, and we can't kid ourselves. It's going to go on for a lot longer. And, it's a multi-billion-dollar machine, and you're talking a small nonprofit organization here and there that are fighting against it. It is difficult. It's nothing about it.
Kathleen, I'm having a little bit of cognitive dissonance. I'm not an expert in Texas's renewable laws, but you guys do pretty well in mandating renewables and taking advantage of some of the unique wind activity. And I'm a little curious as to what you can share with us about the fact that your ex-governor is going to be the future Secretary of Energy in terms of reconciling your attitude, which seemed pretty rational, with what I perceive to be Texas's attitude under Republican government.
That's a very good question, but there's 2 reasons why we have as much renewable in Texas. Because we have among the most optimal wind conditions in the world, and the size of that space. And what's driving it, it's not a state mandate. What's driving it is, we blew through the renewable portfolio standards so fast they never had any meaning. It's the subsidy. It's the size of the subsidy. Where you can
State or federal?
well, federal. Federal. We don't have any state subsidy except perhaps indirectly. There may be some local, but that subsidy is so large, and it only attaches when there's actual generation from them. It's not just the capacity you have installed. And we are having increasing in Texas what people call negawatts, when the renewable generator will pay our grid to utilize their generation, and they still will make a profit from the sales. And it's a subsidy that started in 1992, which is sort of hard to argue. You're talking about a emerging technology. So that's to me, what's going on in Texas is a result of federal decisions.
And what do you think Rick Perry's attitude is?
I don't know. I hope he's that bold. Just to me, it seems questionable. I hope he just doesn't want to seem, because what he said his whole life as a governor, I knew that level the playing field. Don't pick winners and losers in the energy. And we have had a very good mix, of considerable amount of nuclear, coal, natural gas, renewables, even hydroelectric. So I don't know. I'm just hopeful. Actually, I think the Department of Energy could take very strategic steps on a lot of the things we've been talking about. If the final decision makers are willing to make some, 180-degree turns.
Yes, I've interviewed a lot of politicians, journalists, men on the street, and hardly anybody knows the facts about how much is the claim of the increase in temperature. They don't even know how much CO2 is in the atmosphere. They don't know any of the facts. They don't know the fact that carbon dioxide is essential for plant life, and that I lead them to the conclusion that we would all die if there was no carbon dioxide. That's pretty extreme. So the blowback that I get from my interviews is, why don't you interview an expert? And that's why I want to interview you. If you'll grant me an interview, I'll be very appreciative.
Of course.
Because I need an expert, and they're tired of hearing me and my questions, and that would be a great favor to me.
Well, I think that's one of the great promises of the Trump administration, is that we're finally opening up the debate And we're gonna have scientists on both sides involved. We're actually gonna have scientific discussion rather than the politically driven agenda, which has been going on for the last 8 years or so.
Like, what about Agenda 21 also?
Well, sorry, we got a lot of people, we'll get through everyone first.
So if carbon dioxide is not as bad as it's being told, and the EPA prices it in certain ways and puts values on it, why doesn't the EPA at least normalize the price for non-carbon dioxide emitting sources like nuclear or low sources like fracking? Why doesn't the EPA have some kind or have more? They give a lot of benefits to wind power and solar power, which allegedly for being zero CO2, but they don't give a lot of those benefits to nuclear power or other low emissions types. Why, in your opinion?
I think they're on an ideological mission. Sorry, I said I think that they're on like a zealot, a ideological mission, and they have the target, the CO2, but the nuclear thing, and like, boy, this is my lifetime. I still think that is that energy source, incredibly clean energy source. Whether the safety issues are founded or not founded, they're so entrenched that it's very hard to get a change in that. And I think that there's, again, one legitimate environmental question is until this country develops permanent disposal of nuclear waste, I could see why it's not a good idea to build 20 new power plants. We've still not resolved that, the bulk of which is from the Cold War, nuclear weapons, but also from power plants.
But you ought to clarify, Clean Power Plan does have a break for natural gas. It gets half the credit of renewables, but there is a natural gas provision.
Yeah, because it's
Okay, we still have, let's say, about 10 people or so want to ask questions. I want to make sure everyone gets their chance.
Are any of you aware of a study that compares the electrical rates in a given state with the economic health of that state? And admittedly, there are a lot of factors that go into the economic health of the state. Is there a way to do a regression analysis and pull out that piece?
I've never seen one, but I bet there could be.
There are some nationally I've seen from different nations, and it's
Well, it occurred to me that you were talking about the rates in Europe, and certainly that's got to be a major cause of the anemic growth rates in Europe.
And just something I intended to say, and I remarked on this very quickly, that I saw this just last week when there was the concerning security conference that Vice President Pence went to, and then we repeated over and over the position the United States got to have NATO countries to at least contribute the money that they have committed to, and I believe he's the Prime Minister. He's right under Angela Merkel. Sigmar Gabriel said, with total cost of their renewable programs of something like $21 billion annually, and I may be off a little bit, and a not stellar rate of economic growth, where do they find that money? And that's also kind of chilling to me.
I deal in transportation issues, and so the first question I have is, you mentioned 6 pollutants. Can you give us a relative ranking of where, in the mind of EPA or objective people?
I can in a nutshell. I mean, you know, they're watching me forget one. I count the ozone, which is not directly a combination of nitrogen oxides and sunlight, but ozone, lead, carbon monoxide, sulfur dioxide, and fine particulate matter. I'm missing
Mercury.
6 of them. No, mercury's a toxic.
So are nitrous oxides considered?
EPA is obsessed with fine particulate matter.
So the whole issue with Volkswagen, I went to the EPA's website to look at nitrous oxides, and about 75 to 80% of the emissions come from agriculture.
That's right.
Automobiles are only 4% of the total. And I ask people, I never could get an answer. Well, then why are you going so rapidly against Volkswagen and diesel? It just didn't. In other words, we're only looking at one small part of the total problem, and I'm sure there are other instances in the environmental field where that's the case.
there was a UN official who actually admitted that the global climate change agenda was more about income redistribution than it was about climate change. Do you have any comment on that?
And that's gone on since the 1970s. You can go back to the Club of Rome and Lester Brown and all of that really quite openly say that this is, and then it was sustainability. For that, it was food shortage, but that, you know, I don't know what you would call them, but people really thinking massive changes in governance across the world. And that's, EPA doesn't talk that way too much, but the members of the leadership of the UN climate program openly talks that way. The woman who was head of it that just stepped down less than a year ago, openly before she was still in office, she's saying this is the greatest opportunity we've had to dismantle the economic system of the world since 1800. You can find tons of those quotes.
You know, I just wanted to comment on that because, you know, we also need to understand that not everybody has that directive in mind on this issue. There are good, honest scientists on both sides of this issue. The difficulty is putting all the pieces together a lot of times gets lost. You have some scientists that really don't know. I mean, this is such a complicated issue, the whole global warming part, that you'll have scientists that work in just one little aspect of it, and they don't interact, and so they learn they just have to trust what someone else is saying, and that's where a lot of this from as well.
Someone over there, you had a question?
One aspect of the study this gentleman asked about has just been done by Cleveland State. I'd be happy to provide it to you all. It's done in the context of the difference between monopoly utility rates and shopped comparative utility rates. Costs Ohioans about $3 billion a year.
We have about 3 more minutes.
I want to ask Mr. Rizzo, you went through the benefits of the plants of increased carbon, and you more or less didn't tell us how much the planet would warm as you increased carbon by 300 parts per million on that one slide. Is there a point at which you cannot add more carbon to the atmosphere and have a safe, livable, temperate atmosphere? And if so, what is the high end of carbon you'd recommend? Should we be burning everything?
The very first photograph I showed you about productivity took it, the value was at kind of that curvilinear line that was fit to those blue data points. And it showed that you could go from 0 above ambient to I think it was 2,000 above ambient, above what it is today. Now if you burned all the fossil fuels that we could get our hands on today, if I'm wrong.
What would that do to temperature?
Well, just a second, but you only get a CO2 concentration of about 1,500 parts per million, give or take a little bit. So from that perspective, the CO2 concentration, you will always get positive beneficial impacts on the plants. Now flipping the side of that to the temperature, right now the best estimate of the IPCC is anywhere from about 1.4 to I think 4 degrees Celsius increase in temperature for a doubling of CO2. Now, we believe and we feel there's adequate evidence that exists out there, and I showed you the one graphic showing you the models are running about twice as hot as observations presently, that it's probably an order of magnitude smaller than what those model projections are saying. So anywhere from a doubling of CO2 will probably cause something anywhere from about a ½ degree Celsius to maybe 1.5 degrees Celsius warming.
So you think we could safely go to 800 ppm?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Safely go to 800, safely go to 1,000. And one thing you have to remember the whole projections of the future temperature are model based. And so, that data, they're only as good as the models. And I could cite you study after study after study that show problems with the models.
And I asked this quick question of Craig as a scientist. Is it correct though, there, as a kind of caveat on that reasonable science, there's still a lot unknown about the impact of the sun and solar activity on this and on the role of water vapor, which is by far involved in the greatest.
I often say there's no compelling reason to accept those results from the IPCC because we do not know all the forcings and feedbacks that contribute to climate now or in the future or even in the past. But another thing to consider is this: we can look at the historical temperature record. It was warmer by 1 degree Celsius 1,000 years ago. Before that, 2,000 years ago, we had the Roman warm period. Before that, the Minoan warm period, then the Egyptian warm period. You have these cycles where the temperatures during this current interglacial period are anywhere from 1 to 2 or 3 degrees Celsius warmer than they are today. And the Earth did not, the great ice sheets didn't melt, like they're saying and suggesting they will if the temperature's warmed by 2 to 3 to 4 degrees Celsius. So you really got to take these things with a grain of salt, and history provides a wonderful perspective.
I think we have time for one more quick question, and then.
So do you guys feel as if CO2, the rise in CO2, has no negative impact? Or is there no potential, or could there be a potential that's just not accurately proven?
Well, that's still for scientific debate. I think you could say that. I mean, biologically, I would say no. There really is, no negative impact. Having said that, you could find a plant perhaps that does not respond positively to CO2. That you're going to find that in any condition. It's like a bell curve. Most of the results will follow the mean, but you will have some on the tails as well. But most things will benefit. And as far as the net, anything negative, again, temperatures, I would look at the historical record. Most all the empirical data on all of these negative projections that the IPCC thinks is going to happen, these increase in droughts, floods, and that sort of thing. You can look at the historical record, and there's no compelling evidence to say that the rise in CO2 is driving any of that, none whatsoever. And even the IPCC actually acknowledges that so far there's been no impact of CO2 on extreme weather events.
We need to get out of the room, but I think